What's going on, everybody? Welcome into this Monday edition of the Daily Dime. Quite a day we had yesterday. Easily my worst of the entire NFL season from the pick side, and then finally get the really big win, the takedown, win a couple big tickets into the $4,444 contest for NFL. I don't know how to explain it, but we knew that was going to happen that way, didn't we?
Yep, absolutely. That's just kind of how it goes, right? And we'll take it. We'll absolutely take it. Like, I know you guys obviously are locked in. You're doing main slate matchup show and Thursday night show and Sunday morning show, and the written content that we have here and all that. I was on the other end this week. Like, not only am I not as deep in the NFL streets as you and many of the other experts that we have here at FTN Fantasy. I had a birthday party to attend to after the NBA game started on Saturday. Then I had like Christmas, family festivities, early festivities yesterday. So I woke up late on Sunday and I didn't have much time to do any NBA stuff yesterday. But I did 2x the stream with you and Two Gun and looked at the GPP scores and all the content and spent about 30 minutes, double my money. And so it was still a really good NFL day in the DFS streets. So shout out not only to you, congrats on the wins, but there were so many green screens in the NFL chat when I scrolled through last night, because I saw what you tagged me in your winnings, and then I go into the chat and everybody's posting their screenshots. So with my little 2x, I was like, let me stay. I'm just the minnow in here, but everybody else, great day. And look, 2 games tonight as well. I have come to really enjoy these 2-game Monday night slates for a variety of reasons. Yeah. And we'll talk some props here tonight, so I'm excited to get into that. And we have, for the NBA side, we have kind of our last gasp here until Thursday, because just the showdown tomorrow for the Cup final. And then no games on Wednesday. So the 6 games tonight. On the DFS side, I think there's some cool things to talk about. FanDuel, I'm mad at them again today. What else is new? And some really nice props, especially with one of your Sixers, which is my favorite prop of the morning. But let's start with the NFL stuff with those 2 games tonight, because let's stay hot. Let's turn it back around on the prop side of things.
Exactly. And actually, it's also funny because although we went, I don't know the exact numbers off the top of my head, but it felt like we went about 4 for 15 on picks yesterday in the NFL. We actually are live for a big 3-pick hit with Austin Hooper getting there, Quentin Johnson getting there, and now needing DeAndre Swift under 54.5 rushing yards. Swift is down to 51.5. So I don't know how interested I am in that one this morning. I think I definitely still lean under. Oh my God, it's now down to 50.5. So clearly we were on the right side of the 54.5. Doesn't mean it's going to hit, but this continues to come crashing down. So, I mean, this might, at this rate, it might get to like 47.5, 48.5. I think it's probably still like a 55% play at 50.5, but at 54.5, it's probably more like a 60% play, which is what we're always aiming for. So I think I'm going to go slightly elsewhere on this one. I'm going to go Jacoby Myers to start over 61.5 receiving yards. Atlanta is just getting gashed all season by opposing wide receiver ones. Can see that here on the DVOA adjusted fantasy points against tab, plus 37% for opposing wide receiver ones. Second best matchup for wide receiver ones, only behind Baltimore this season. And they have allowed the most production by far in the NFL to receivers lined up out wide. Now, this isn't necessarily great for Jacoby Myers, but Myers' yards per out run is fairly similar in the slot versus out wide. The difference for him relative to Brock Bowers is that Bowers is almost never lined up out wide, and Jacoby Myers is lined up out wide a fair amount. So we know that their passing game really runs through 2 guys, Myers and Bowers, and this just happens to be a much better matchup for Myers than it is for Bowers. You also see the minus 11% for opposing tight end. So in a game where I expect them to have to throw the ball a bunch, in a game where the matchup for Bowers isn't great, I will lean pretty heavily here on Jacoby Myers. 61.5, I think, is really low. He continues to go over this kind of game in and game out. And the only real question is quarterback play, but he's been doing it all year with bad quarterback play. So who really cares about that at this point?
Look, I got distracted. I tuned back in. David Montgomery, MCL injury, out indefinitely, and that is a crushing blow to some of my season-long teams. So the rage is building inside of me. I need that Swift under to hit tonight now. I need my oh God in my 2 most important leagues, Alex, and I traded for him in one. That's tough. But Jacoby Myers here tonight. It makes sense talking about him, Bowers, this Atlanta matchup. We've got Vegas and Atlanta tonight. What about the other game? Are we pulling something from there? Are we going to the Atlanta side of this? Like maybe the rushing attack? Like, I mean, Bijan, I know that first half prop that you posted in the Pick'em Games channel the other night. I think it took 15 minutes and it was like 6 yards higher than when you posted it. So I was slow on the draw there.
That was not Bijan. That was Brian.
Oh,
and it lost.
Okay. Gotcha.
That was one of the 10-15 that lost yesterday. I also had Brian Robinson in my takedown lineup, by the way. And so like I had a very good game, very good day. It could have been that much better if Brian Robinson did a damn thing. Their play calling was driving me insane. And it seemed to me like their play calling was like, hey, we're going to end up blowing out the Saints. So we should throw the ball a lot early on so that we can actually get some reps in early.
Yeah.
And they just never went to the running game.
Yeah.
So that was a nightmare to watch. I think a couple times they threw the ball on like the 1 yard line. One was a touchdown, and then the other one ended up being a field goal. It's like, just hand the ball to Brian Robinson. Right. Let me get my touchdown. Let me get my first half yards. That was an absolute nightmare to watch that game. And I was watching with my cousin and uncle, who are both Commanders fans, and they were just like, they couldn't believe what they were watching either. Janie Daniels taking sack after sack. It was. So fortunately, the rest of the day went very well. But
so are we going to go to Bijan Robinson here? Like, what are we talking about on the Atlanta side?
We are instead going to Tyler Algier over 27.5 rushing yards. And I think this is a good spot for Bijan too. But let's just take a quick look at this line for Bijan. It looks like it's going to momentarily down. 115.5 rushing plus receiving. The rushing was something like 81.5. So still a really, really high number, whereas the number for Algier really low here at just 27.5. And the key here is that this rushing rotation between Algier and Bijan Robinson, like a lot of people have complained about it and they say that it's unpredictable and they don't know when Algier is going to have these big spike volume games or not. Like, to me, it's actually pretty clear. Algier is more likely to be on the field in positive game scripts, and he's more likely to be on the field when they are running the ball a ton and they just need to get Bijan some rest here and there. And this matchup with Las Vegas is great in both of those areas. Las Vegas is an easy team to run against. You see in the DVOA adjusted fantasy points against data what a great matchup this is for running backs plus 10%. And in addition to that, like, it's just a game script thing. This Las Vegas team stinks. And if we have Myers in there because we think that they're going to have to throw the ball a bunch because they're going to be trailing, that also means Atlanta is leading. And then we see Tyler Algier. The other thing I like about this, Las Vegas has actually been fairly decent from an adjusted line yards perspective, but they're 30th in the league in open field yards per carry, which means I like the idea of, Algier can hit this in just one run. If he had a longest rush prop, I would also be interested in that one. I'm not super interested in for Bijan. For whatever reason, Bijan just doesn't break off a ton of runs, and Las Vegas has been good at preventing explosive runs against the outside zone, which both of these running backs like to use a lot. But 27.5, super, super low for a guy that I think is going to get 8 to 10 carries if this game goes according to plan.
No, yeah, and I think that's kind of where I thought you were going to go with it. Like, according to plan, this Algier line feels really, really good. For what it's worth, did a quick refresh. The Bijan rushing yards now up to 82.5. So climbing here, kind of unsurprisingly on a Monday, right, where we've only got 2 games. Yep. People are locked in here and they're seeing the big names. They're taking the overs. So that line trickling upwards. I saw Shazam in here talking about the Raiders tackling. I also saw, and this is what I wanted to ask you before we get to the next pick. Our buddy AQA saw in here saying, I have about 8 minutes before he comes in and floods you with PGA Sims questions. Do we have PGA contests on Thursday?
No, we won't see any more PGA until the first week of January when they're in Hawaii. I think the plan for our contest sims with PGA is it's going to be like a even more of a beta test potentially than what we're currently using for NFL up until the Super Bowl. The week of the Super Bowl is also the Waste Management Open at TPC Scottsdale, where you get like the stadium hole. It's everyone's favorite week on tour, at least for those who aren't like diehard PGA fans. It's just a super fun week. So I think that's going to be the first week where it's like the full Sims product is a full go for us here at FTN. But yeah, incredibly exciting to have that because we already dominated PGA this last year, and this is just going to make it that much better.
Yeah, and again, if it's anything like the NFL Sims have been so far, doing pretty well. And Shazam saying, ready for the world to see how terrible Desmond Ritter actually is. Hey, revenge spot tonight for Des Ritter.
Very true. Yeah, he can get revenge for them realizing that he stinks by continuing to stink.
I have so many notifications turned on my Twitter account that I just keep getting hit with Montgomery's out. Let's go to the next pick. Get my mind off this disaster.
What is the next one? Aaron Jones over 65.5 rushing yards. What is with this? I got to refresh here.
Yeah.
So Chicago has been a really bad run defense all season. They have been especially bad in the last 5 weeks or so. Now, coincidentally, this is already up to 66.5. So probably want to get in on this before it becomes 71.5, 72.5 by game time, something like that. They can't stop the run. And because they can't convert first downs offensively, they can't run the ball. They have to throw the ball a ton. And Caleb Williams hasn't been great. They are ending up like boosting opponent play volume a ton and especially boosting opponent run volume. So you combine the fact that you can't stop the run with the fact that you are giving up a lot of explosive runs with the fact that you're giving up a ton of rush volume, and the opposing rushing, I think, has hit for like 6-7 consecutive weeks or something against Chicago. And in some of those games, it's like both running backs are going over both of their lines. So for example, we saw in that Detroit game, like I think it was both Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs were over 80 yards or something like that. The run game against Chicago has just been hitting in every single way. This matchup is phenomenal for Aaron Jones. This line is kind of low because the Vikings haven't had to lean on Jones a ton, but I think that they will in this game, and I think we will see it happen more down the stretch as they continue to fight for both seeding and that playoff spot. So Aaron Jones over 66.5 rushing yards. Like I said, I think it goes up to at least 70 by game time.
Yeah, I like it. And again, when you posted that, if you're an FTN fantasy subscriber, you already had these 3 picks in the Pick'em Games channel here this morning. So again, Alex, knowing that these lines are going to move, we're already seeing it there with Aaron Jones. Getting that in early, got a little bit better value there on the entry here this morning. Do you have anything else from the NFL side you're eyeing? Maybe not that you're putting in that, but that you have your eye on.
Yeah, so there I think there are a couple things we want to touch on real quick before we move on to NBA and start to build out some 6-pick plays, or anyone can also say, you know what, maybe they just don't have it this week in NFL, and I'm just going to play the NBA plays as a 3-pick. But I still, as I said, I still like the under a little bit here on Swift. I think I'm going to reserve it at this point more for 6-pick play entries instead of like doing a round robin for 3 picks, because we already have the under 54.5, which would give us a 3-pick hit if that hits. One thing I want to point out, though, notice instead of the standard 10x here, we'd be getting 9.5x. They are penalizing the correlation of the Aaron Jones over with the DeAndre Swift under. Honestly, like those are as correlated as quarterback wide receiver stacks in many cases. So I'm not surprised that they're doing this. And if we do a 6-pick play with it, like we're still getting pretty good odds. It only goes down to 23.75x. And I know one of our NBA picks actually boosts that payout right back to around 25x. So I'm going to leave this in consideration for those 6-pick plays. But last thing I want to note on the 3-pick plays, we talk a lot about how important it is to be on underdog to get these 6x payouts. And so I wanted to show something here with our pick tracker this season. You can now see after this season worst day down to 58% on these NFL picks. Now, just like after our season best day of going 9 for 9 or something like that, when we were up at 64% and we knew that 64% wouldn't last, I don't think 58% is going to last either. I think we're going to settle in long-term around 60, 61%, kind of smack dab in the middle of those extremes. But let's just say that 58% is our long-term average. Notice what happens. I actually have to momentarily stop sharing this screen so I can share the other one. Mm-hmm. When we look at the expected probabilities for these plays, and we put in 58% here on underdog, we have an expected value of plus 17%. Now, over an entire season, like plus 17%, you're going to be very happy with the amount of money that puts into your account. And on 6-pick plays, it goes all the way up to 46% and then 48% on 8 picks. So this is still like super, super profitable at this 58% number, unless you are on Price Picks and you're tailing a lot of these 3-pick plays. The difference between a 5x payout and a 6-pick and a 6x payout might not seem like a lot, right? On the one hand, it's like, hey, if the play doesn't hit, it doesn't hit, and I don't care. And if the play does hit, I'm happy whether it's a 5x payout or a 6x payout. So why should I care about the difference? Here's why. Plus 17% on 3-pick plays here on Underdog, at 58% on Prize Picks, negative 2.4%, which tells you two things. Number one, you should get your ass over to Underdog. Use promo code FTN when you sign up for Underdog. But it also means if you're tailing us and we give out a 3-pick play, don't play the 3-pick here on Prize Picks. Make sure you're at least finding a fourth of your own. Ideally, you're finding at least 2 to get to a 5-pick play or a 6-pick play here. And now all of a sudden you see like this bigger 40% expected value on the 6-pick flex play over on Prize Picks. So you can see 40.2% versus the 45.7, which again, like even the 6-pick plays are better here on Underdog, which is why we focus so much on Underdog. But it's worth pointing out, like, if you are just tailing us and you're wondering like, man, they're having so much success, why am I not having that success? It's because you're getting a terrible payout over on Prize Picks. So get yourself to the better site over on Underdog. That is my TED Talk here. So why don't we move on now to some NBA stuff?
Yeah, let's talk some hoops. And I just want to get right into that first pick that I was kind of teasing. Sixers and Hornets tonight. No Embiid for Philly. Obviously the sinus fracture, I think it was. Mm-hmm. Just really scary for a guy who, has broken facial bones, I think twice before in his career. You see how relatively like minor hit, like somebody coming at you, an NBA sized guy coming at you, hitting you in the face is going to hurt almost anybody, but just going down, taking out a guy like that with a little knock to the face. Hope he gets back soon. Guess we'll get masked Embiid once again. But we have 17 games without Embiid this season. Gershon Yabusele should continue to start here tonight, maybe even at the 5. I do think we see him at the 4 with Drummond slotting in, but we've seen Nick Nurse start Yabu at the 5 at times this season. So his rebounds prop is set at 4.5 here on Underdog, and it's 9.4x last time I looked. I'm going to immediately just take that up to 5.5, and that's 1.14x here. And even at that number, I think that this is my favorite play so far that I have found on the day, because he is over this 5.5 number in 10 of the 17 games without Embiid this season. But in games where Yabu plays 30 or more minutes without Embiid, he's over in 7 of 8 games. And we have him for 32 minutes here tonight. I think 30 should probably be your baseline. I don't think you can go below that against Charlotte here if Yabu is getting the start. And we already have 2 games against Charlotte without Joel Embiid, 8 and 12 rebounds respectively for Yabu in those games. So like, I'm totally fine to go up to that 7.5 too in entries. If you want to ladder this, 2.44x for 7.5. Last I looked, they are putting out a 9.5 line there. I think it's like 7 and some change in terms of the multiplier there. He's only over in 2 of the 17 games without Embiid getting to double-digit rebounds. But if he 6:30 that lineup comes out and he's at the 5, then I'm probably going to have an entry or 2 in there with that 9.5. But the 5.5 for 1.14x it really feels like a smash to me tonight. You get it at 5 flat over there on Prize Picks. And I know we were just talking about we'd rather play on Underdog than Prize Picks, but I've got 3 fantasy point plays on Prize Picks where we can make a 6-pick. So we'll talk about those here in a little bit. But this is my first prop of the night. Over 5.5 rebounds for Gershon Yabusele, 1.14x. I love this pick.
He's averaging 5.4 rebounds in 24 minutes a game. So if you expect him to be at or above 30, like it sounds like we do, I mean, it's just pure math at that point. So I love this one as well. I think, number one, I'm going to use this in all of the 6-pick stuff I do tonight, but I also might mix the Yabusele in with some of the NFL stuff for 3-pick plays. I have in mind the way I want to do that. So kind of stay tuned for our subscribers. I'll put that in the Pick'em channel once we are done here.
Yeah. For what it's worth,
where do you want to go from there?
I was just saying we haven't projected for 6.9 rebounds, which is very nice, of course, but you can see how high the model is on Yabu's rebounds here tonight, and it's a 2.5 point spread in favor of the visiting Sixers there. So again, really like that pick. Next, let's go to Miami and Detroit. This one's in the Motor City, but the Heat are 4.5 point road favorites here, and a little bit shorthanded. No Nikola Jovic tonight, no Pelle Larsson, no Josh Richardson. And again, those guys haven't been playing giant roles in the first place, especially Jovic. We've pulled back the reins on the young Serbian there. But we have Duncan Robinson projected for 28 minutes here tonight. Those guys being out just take away the options for Coach Spo to mix and match these wing minutes and, kind of cut the floor out from under Duncan Robinson. So Robinson's averaging 11 points per game on the season in 22.5 minutes. But he started 11 games, 12.2 points per game, and 25 minutes per game. And he's over this number in 5 of his last 6 against Detroit, going back to the start of last season. And he's got 8 games this season of 27 minutes or more. Again, we have him projected for 28 here tonight and 13.3 points. In those 8 games of 27 minutes or more, he's over in 6 of 8. So I like Duncan Robinson here. Again, should continue to start for this team. And we've just seen him, kind of in favor with Spo as Terry Rozier drops off. You get more Drew Smith in this rotation now as well. But I think this number is at least a point too low here. And another guy where, I don't hate examining the ladder opportunities, but 10.5 feels pretty good.
Yeah, there are a couple things that I'll add to this. The first is, let's remember Tyler Hero also on the floor a lot of the time. So it's not like defense can just say, we can't let Duncan Robinson be the guy who shoots. They have other guys who can make those outside shots, which is especially important to me because this Detroit team allows the 5th most threes per game. So I think this 10.5 number very solid. I have some concerns that it's just Duncan Robinson. It's a very shot dependent guy who's not a high volume shooter. So it just feels like even when we haven't projected, I think we have him at 13.3 points, that maybe we are underestimating the amount of variance around that. But we're calling this such a high probability play that this is definitely still more than good enough for us to include in 6 pick plays. And I like your next points pick even more than this one.
Yeah, I was just going to say on those, again, Duncan Robinson started 11 games this year. It's the last 11 games in a row. But if you just open it up to the last 8 games, 11 or 12 shot attempts in 5 of those 8. So he's getting up to that double-digit range. Yeah. And again, most of those are coming from deep. So you don't need a ton to go right there for Duncan to go over this number. But I think I'm with you. Malik Monk looks pretty darn good here tonight. Kings and Nuggets, one of the 2 kind of late night hammers we have. This one 10 p.m. Eastern out there in Sacramento. Kings are 1-point home dogs here, but 239.5 implied total. And we have a doubtful Kevin Huerter for the Kings. So the line's at 16.5. We have him for 18.4 points tonight against the Nuggets. He's got 9 games this season playing 31 or more minutes. He's over this number in 8 of those 9 games. And he's played at least 31 minutes and 44 seconds in all 6 of his starts, with the one exception. We played 26.5 minutes against the Jazz. They won by 44. He had 16 points in that abbreviated run against the Jazz that night. And again, with no Huerter tonight, they have bodies, right? You're going to see some Colby Jones, more Keon Ellis in this rotation, and maybe some other secondary, tertiary names. But I think the minutes floor for Malik Monk and all of these starters, traditionally really high, but Monk is kind of the guy in this first 5 right now that has a little bit more volatility to his minutes. But with Huerter expected to miss here, I can't get away from this Malik Monk number at 16.5 in a game with essentially a 240 total and a 1-point spread. Love this Monk pick here tonight. So I think in terms of order of confidence with those 3, Yabusele, Monk, and then Robinson right behind him.
Navari pointing out as you were going through all that, which agree with all of it. I honestly have nothing to add. This Monk play just seems really solid. Jacoby Myers has dropped down to 59.5. So definitely like it there. Like I said, the matchup really, really good for him, or at least significantly better for him than it is for Brock Bowers. My guess is that this number is coming down because of Desmond Ridder, but we already knew that Desmond Ridder was starting. So why is this coming down just because that was announced? officially about 10 minutes ago. So still like this. And now we have a full 6-pick play here, paying out at 28.5x. We have the Monk over 16.5 points, Robinson over 10.5 points, Yabu over 5.5 rebounds, boosted up to 1.14x. Reminder, that's going to show up for you as 4.5 and 0.94x. You just have to click those little arrows to find that 1.14. Did not mean to take that out. So let me go put that back in real quick. And then we have the NFL plays over 66.5 rushing yards for Aaron Jones. Where did those rebounds go? What the heck? This interface could use some work. We've put that up before, but it could use some work. There we go. Now it's back. Okay. Then we have the Tyler Algier over 27.5 rushing yards, and now Jacoby Myers over 59.5 receiving yards. I want to make one final comment here about NFL. Appreciate this, Ian. Starting my day with Daily Dimes better than coffee. I think it's a little late to start your day here at noon. Hey, to each their own. Maybe you're on the West Coast. I don't know.
I actually know Ian. He is not on the West Coast.
That's hilarious. You know what? Maybe it's just a figure of speech. Maybe he's not really just starting his day at this point in time. But Navari also pointing out NFL Sims really showed up yesterday. We kind of started the show talking about all the success, and we should have mentioned the fact that a lot of that success definitely related to the Sims. And we kind of talked about it like all week that we're still learning how to use these Sims and not rely too much on them and still use the GPP scores, which have been so incredible for us in all of these sports. And that was what I really focused on this week, was kind of using the GPP scores as the foundation and then using the Sims to help narrow down my lineup decisions. Like the Sims were instrumental on my choosing James Conner, for example, as my running back surrounding that stack that I liked so much, that the GPP scores pointed so easily to that New York Jets stack with both Garrett Wilson and Devontae Adams all the way up at the top of the GPP scores at the wide receiver position. So I want to remind everybody, the NFL Sims, the contest Sims, are free with any DFS subscription through the Super Bowl this year. So if you guys love watching us here on the Daily Dime, if you considered joining at any point in time, this is the absolute best time because you get to try this massively valuable product now, the contest Sims, for free with the rest of your DFS subscription or VIP subscription for the rest of this season. Zach, I know you are going to jump into the DFS slate now for NBA. I'm going to have to jump off, but wanted to leave you guys with that final message.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate it. Let's stay hot tonight. All right. And, get back to the good graces on the NFL prop side of things. Feeling good about it. So looking forward to NFL stream tonight, right?
Yes. It won't, I won't be on it. I've got some errands to run this evening. I think Two Gun's going to be on by himself. It's going to be a very cool show though, because Two Gun is going to review the lineup that he used to finish. I think it was 5th, 6th, 7th, something like that in the DraftKings. Yeah, in the DraftKings World Championship. So he's going to do a lineup review, kind of talk about what his process was, what his experience was, and then he's going to dive into the showdown tonight. We have taken care of the picks here on the Daily Dime for Underdog. So fun stuff.
Right, well, yeah, I will see you tomorrow, my friend.
Right back at you.
All right, see ya. All right, everybody, let's pull up the GPP scores on the NBA side of things here this morning. We'll get a quick refresh. I see Ian firing back. So the rest is important, bro. Hey, just poking fun. And then Navari said the only part that he screwed up using the Sims was using the Sims to try to get my focus, but not fading Saquon. It's about the only thing that didn't go right for Philly yesterday. Tough one for my Steelers. You shout out to Alex, right? The Eagles guy. He didn't rub it in this morning. Let's pull up the GPP scores here. As I do that, I mentioned I have a number of Prize Picks plays to get up to a 6-pick over there on Prize Picks. So if you want the NBA 6-pick play, you can use the 3 props that we talked about on the underdog side of things, right? So Yabusele, who looks like he is now up to 5.5 rebounds on Prize Picks. So Prize Picks getting wise. Duncan Robinson over 10.5 points, Malik Monk over 16.5 points. Then a trio of fantasy score props that I think are a little bit too low here this morning. So RJ Barrett, 44 fantasy score, Norman Powell, 28.5, Nikola Vucevic, 38.5. All three of those would be more than selections on Prize Picks to get a little 6-pick play action on or over on that site. Let's get a couple zooms here. We can run through these slates fairly quickly. 6-gamer on both sites. Now, the first thing that drew my attention here this morning when I opened up the slate is Brooklyn on the slate. Nets, of course, sent Dennis Schroeder to Golden State over the weekend. In return, got, I think, D'Anthony Melton, Reese Beekman, and a couple second-round picks. I think it was 3 second-round picks. So no Schroeder. So there is some value here tonight, but the prices aren't, like, they don't jump off the page, and the matchup against Cleveland is not an advantageous one. Cleveland 9.5-point road favorites here and a 216.5 implied total. It's the lowest on the slate, I believe, by a point, maybe a half point there. But we're going to have some value available in the backcourt, right? Whether it's a Shake Milton, maybe you see like a Tyrese Martin get into this lineup for Schroeder. Again, Shake the most likely one, but you could also see Ben Simmons slot in at the 1 and be out there with Nick Claxton. So that is a lineup to watch. That's a 7:30 start. And let's keep moving here because I think there are some other games. Toronto, Chicago stands out on both sites. On FanDuel, and we'll get there. We'll start DraftKings specifically here through our short rundown, but 240 total with a close spread there between the Raptors and the Bulls. You know, this one is north of the border. Bulls are 2-point road favorites, 240.5 now in terms of this total. So on the Toronto side, Jonathan Mabo, if he starts again, is going to be a usable value. I think Jakob Poeltl should get back into this starting lineup after that weird, I assume he just had to use the bathroom instead of his back being that big of a problem before that game against Miami the other night, but should see Poeltl get back into this lineup. Still no Scotty Barnes. On the back end of the rotation, no Jamison Battle here tonight. So I think we can kind of lock in on, your Grady Dicks, your RJ Barretts, your Jakob Poeltls. But I think more so on FanDuel. We can sort by GPP score here. And the model loves Jakob Poeltl kind of in his own tier here in terms of his GPP score. And 36% projected ownership. He is the second highest owned player in terms of the ownership projections. And I mentioned getting to Toronto. You see 4 of the top 5 with Kevin Porter Jr. there at 4,400. The lone non-Raptor in the top 5 in terms of the ownership projections here on DraftKings this morning. So 7,300 for Poeltl. Looks good. I mentioned Mabo first. As a value, still low 4Ks, power forward, center eligible. So he stands out here this morning as a value option. Pistons and Heat, again, we talked about Duncan Robinson from the prop perspective, but on the Heat side, you can see a lot of attention being paid to Drew Smith at just 3,800. That makes some sense with how he's the minutes allocations he's been getting in these rotations of late. Bam at 8,200, going up against that Detroit front court. That all makes some sense to me. You can see Duncan Robinson in here in terms of the ownership. Low teens at 4,100, shooting guard only. And then Tyler Hero is the one that the model loves the most in these large field tournaments in terms of his GPP score, 7,600, right around 12% projected ownership. So the Heat in a very good spot as well, despite the 219 total there. Desmond Ridder starting. Browns unsettled on who their starting quarterback will be. Yeah, I bet. Let's see. Other thoughts here on DraftKings. We have the Jokic decision, 12-2. You can see the GPP score. Loves him in just 15.5% projected ownership. I think we have enough value already, and I think more will open up throughout the day, where I am on the play Jokic side even before seeing this GPP score here this morning. But you've got some choices to make at center. And I think you can fade Jokic, but again, for me, like, I think the projection of 61.2 DK points is maybe a little bit light here. We did see, of course, like one of the worst Jokic outputs fantasy-wise last time out. So looking to turn around here, again, I mentioned the 240. Now 241 total there in Toronto between the Raptors and Bulls. 239 Kings and Nuggets right behind there with just a 1-point spread in favor of Denver here. So if the slate was starting, in 5 minutes, I would be well over that 15.5% number for Nikola Jokic. But if you did fade him, there's not a ton of spend ups tonight. I think LaMelo, who's questionable in Charlotte, is the only other 5K player in terms of his salary. But there's a number of like high 8, low 9K guys that I think you can use to build a pretty solid lineup if you are fading the Joker. I think Harden as 8.5 point home favorites in the 10:30 game against the Jazz, 223 implied total, low 9Ks for him. You can see the model likes RJ Barrett 9,100 in that game with a 241 total and a close spread. I think RJ Barrett is well worth it, especially if we see the same starting lineup as last time and just swap Jakob Poeltl in for Bruno Fernando. Like point RJ Barrett even at 9,100 feels pretty darn good. Kings on the other side of that game, again, the prices are correct, but getting a piece of that Kings starting group also feels good in terms of that minutes floor. Model still on the other side of that Utah game, like Kessler's up here in the top 5 rather, in terms of GPP scores, making it tough with their center decisions there. Still liking John Collins. The model is at 7,800 with Jordan Clarkson back. That's just been the differentiator for John Collins this year. I think he's a little bit overpriced, but the ownership is not there, right? Sub 2%. So he probably stays in the player pool for me in terms of MME builds. Let's see. Preston said, Collins over 15.5 points. Am I right? I don't know, man. Like, Clarkson being back worries me a little bit, like I mentioned, for John Collins. And it's just not a good matchup. Like, if you're not respecting the Clippers defense at this point, I think you need to hop on that train as well. But we did see a point in Collins' favor. Even with Clarkson and Kyle Filipowski back in last game, he's stuck in that starting lineup and 34 plus minutes against Phoenix in that 8-point loss. 8 for 12 from the floor, 4 of 6 from 3. So he continued just his uber efficiency from the floor this season. But that's not somewhere I'm rushing to tonight, P-Buck, in terms of Collins and his points prop. But the model likes it more than I do. So if that's something you're already on, the projection is 17.8 points here. So I would lean towards the over if you put a Nerf gun to my head and said choose the side on John Collins points. But it's not one that I have in my entry so far this morning. And now, so let's work some FanDuel talk in here because Derek has to make the Grady Dick joke. And I'm with you, man. Look, if you're not locked in on Dick tonight on FanDuel, I think you're just kind of doing it wrong. Let's see what the field is doing. And for the top 5 in terms of projected ownership on FanDuel are Raptors. And I have no problem with that. I think the entire team is underpriced by about 1,000 for like almost everybody. Matchup with Chicago is superb. 241 implied total, 2-point spread. RJ Barrett, 8,800, small and power forward eligible. Get him in there. The field is as well. I think that's really good chalk with how much he's going to do for this team tonight or projects to do. Mogbo, sub 5K power forward only, 46% projected owned. I would prefer, if I have to choose between Mogbo and Grady Dick, lock in on the Dick tonight. 5,200, guard forward eligible. He's way too cheap. And I think out of these top, and like Jacoby Walter is pulling 33% at 4K. Again, that makes sense to me. I don't think he's really necessary tonight. Like, I'd rather get to $7,800 Poeltl, I think, than a 33% owned Jacoby Walter. I think we can do a little bit better, but he's not a bad play by any means at that price, right? Agbaji, 4,500. He's picking up 20% projected ownership. It's just like it might be a 4 Raptors day. It's kind of what the field is doing. So like maybe we try to get a little bit different. Again, news will break throughout the day. But yeah, Derek, right on the right track there. I think my first note in my FanDuel notes here this morning was Raptors. The one thing I do want to mention about the Charlotte game, specifically on FanDuel, right? You can see in terms of the ownership here, Kelly Oubre, 5,700, guard forward eligible. Maybe that's a little bit of an interesting pivot off Grady Dick. if you want to fade that ownership. I think you can play both, though, especially with the MPE there. So the field liking Oubre, Yabusele at 5,100. Again, I totally get that. And we'll see what the starting lineup looks like for Philly. But Q tag on LaMelo Ball. And at 10K on DraftKings, you would assume he's going to have some sort of minutes restriction built in here today. I don't think he's out of play, because unless we get a number that is less than 30, I think taking a shot on LaMelo on DraftKings at low ownership in an MME build makes some sense. But 9K over here on FanDuel, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, 9K on FanDuel. If he's in and playing, and again, we don't have news that he's going to play like 30 minutes or less, that's his minutes cap tonight, I really want 9K LaMelo over there on FanDuel. And you can see that some other spend-ups are getting the attention. Of course, RJ Barrett, rightfully so. But even at guard, De'Aaron Fox, 28% owned at 8,900. And I get it. James Harden, 9,200. But LaMelo Ball would feel real good at 9K there on FanDuel. Again, we're pending a potential minutes limit if he gets out there and plays. So just keep your eye on that. GPP scores for FanDuel before we get out of here. Again, Jakob Poeltl topping the GPP scores on both sites. I think it makes sense as long as he gets the start here, getting back into that first five. Vooch on the other side of that game, 8,200. That makes some sense. Again, I mentioned his fantasy prop over there on Prize Picks is one that I like the over on here this morning. Jokic also. So your top three right there, you are having to make a very important decision at center, because Jokic, even at 12.5, single-digit owned, it's somebody you at least got to stop and think about. And you can see in the GPP scores here, LaMelo Ball popping with the 1.8 there. So he's in the top 10 on the morning run there on FanDuel. And I think the last thing I want to touch on, Bulls do have a Q tag, even as 2-point favorites here on Zach LaVine. I lean that he plays. But if he's out, right, then we have even more interest in guys like Josh Giddey, Kobe White, Ayo Dosunmu, Nikola Vucevic. Probably not Pat Williams. I would imagine he's still going to be on the minutes limit. He was given the 20 to 24 limit in his return last game, and I think he played like 15 off the bench. So the Bulls are certainly a team to watch, especially being on the other side of the Raptors in that game with the 241 implied total. So I think that's about all I've got this morning in terms of the DraftKings and FanDuel slates. But of course, all of our subscribers will be discussing the news throughout the day, the updates to ownership, GPP scores, and the like. Looking forward to a full night's slate here with the 6 games, 2 of them being those late night starts if you're on the East Coast. So looking forward to it before we go into kind of our 2-day hibernation, so to speak. Again, we will be back tomorrow talking the NBA Cup finale, Bucks and Thunder out there in Las Vegas. Very excited to watch that game for sure. We'll see what type of offerings there are. And of course, we'll talk about, on the prop side, we'll talk about the DFS slates as well from a showdown perspective on Tuesday. So probably a more abbreviated version of the Daily Dime on Tuesday. Probably going to take Wednesday off, no games to talk about, right? But you will get your main slate matchup show on Wednesday night for the NFL side with Alex. And then Thursday, huge NBA slate, so we'll hit the ground running. But be back here tomorrow talking the NBA Cup finale. And later tonight, you get Two Gun on the NFL show, FTN Fast Break podcast early this afternoon with Adam and myself. So lots of content here today throughout the rest of the week at FTN Fantasy. Appreciate you all tuning in, sticking with me and Alex while he was here. Whether you caught us live or on the replay, again, on your way out, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit like on the video, like and repost over there on Twitter. Good luck tonight, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow. Goodbye.